A consultant to the officers who brought Burrell to court believes that when the police went into Burrell's house, they weren't looking for any old stuff. They were looking for one thing in particular. Was this one thing the subject of the discussion in that car?
It was fairly common knowledge for those within royal circles that the late princess kept a lot of personal items in a mahogany box. In that box there were personal letters from the Duke of Edinburgh, there were personal letters private to herself, and also it was alleged there was a tape in there that she personally had made of an interview that she'd carried out with the late George Smith, who was a footman or a butler.
I wanted to know more. Why would Diana have secretly recorded a tape with this butler, George Smith? I found out that George Smith, like Burrell, had been a long-serving member of palace staff. As a soldier, he had served in the Falklands War and been decorated. After military service, he joined the palace, where he was liked and trusted. Yet one night in 1989, he claimed he was raped by a male member of the royal household. Smith didn't dare report the rape at the time for fear of losing his job.
I knew George Smith very well. George Smith was not someone that would actually make this up. You know, this was not George Smith fantasizing. Something had happened to him.
Smith became ill, severely depressed, and an alcoholic. He left the palace and was admitted to the Priory Clinic. But one day, someone came knocking. It was Princess Diana with a tape recorder.
Diana had decided to go and see George Smith in the Priory, and at that time recorded that conversation onto a tape. And it was that tape of that conversation that formed one of many items that became part of the box. Now, I think Diana was almost becoming the amateur sleuth here.
What was Diana doing recording an allegation of homosexual rape at the palace? Was she looking for secrets in the royal household? Diana told Burrell she had made this tape. The question was, after Diana died, did Burrell get the tape? And was this the reason the Queen came through at the trial and the case against Burrell collapsed?
Paul Burrell knew it existed, that tape, as did many other people. And it was right, I would suppose, in Burrell's mind, that he actually kept that mahogany box. Whether he kept it for his own personal use, financially, or he did it in the interests of the Princess Wales, one will never know. But it was that mahogany box that was crucial, in my view, to this investigation.
It has never been proved that Burrell had that mahogany box. The police did not recover it when they raided his home. But what I had been told was extraordinary. A secret recording by a princess. It was the stuff of conspiracy theories, except this had been told to me by a decorated police officer. And the people I had met agreed that whether Burrell did or didn't have the tape didn't matter. The risk of Burrell going into the dock couldn't be taken.
I don't think you have to be too intelligent to realise what the fallout would be had Paul Burrell stood in that witness box. There had to be a way round to find him a way out. It was really a question of making sure that the contents of that tape was never heard in public. And to that end, you can say they were successful, because it hasn't.
Burrell had played the palace at poker and won. Burrell was famous and free.
As you see, we are a family and we will stay united, no matter what.
On the steps of his house, he seemed reluctant to leave the cameras behind. He was now a celebrity. He wrote 2 books that made him a fortune.
How are you?
He appeared on chat shows and on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here.
To infinity and beyond!
Where he came second behind Joe Pasquale.
So we're all being fed.
We lapped up the secrets in his books as a guilty pleasure. But the mood began to turn on Burrell. By the second book, we'd had enough. He was no longer Diana's amusing ex-butler. He was a cynical opportunist who'd wrung his loyalty dry for cash. But was this why we hated him? I looked again at the footage of Burrell at the press conference following the trial. There were tensions beneath the happiness. He was asked if his life would ever be the same again. His wife Maria said yes, and Burrell said no. What did he know that she didn't? That his card was marked?
And do you think life can ever get back to normal? I don't think life will ever be normal again.
I'll be in that shop next week, so anybody, if you want to come buy some flowers.
Hours after the case collapsed, Burrell did a deal with the Daily Mirror through Steve Dennis, and in one moment made an enemy of the rest of Fleet Street.
The only mistake Paul Burrell has ever made, is to sell his story to one newspaper. And for that decision, the rest of Fleet Street has never and will never forgive him. This has got nothing to do with betraying Diana. This has got everything to do with betraying the editors of the newspapers who thought they had a right to tell his story.
So how was this revenge enacted? 9 days after the trial collapsed, Burrell's former gay lover, Greg Peed, tracked down to his home in Australia.
If anyone ever outed Paul Burrell, it was me. But it wasn't my idea to do it. The press had been tipped off and camped outside my home waiting for a story. And I said to them, "How did you find out about me and how did you know where I live?" And he said, "We were tipped off by the Palace."
What Greg told me was astounding. If he was right, it was the Palace that had sent the tabloids to out Burrell. What happened to George Smith? The allegations he'd made were potentially very damaging to the Palace. The same papers that had investigated his rape allegations now rubbished his claims, saying he was mentally unstable and a fantasist. It seemed almost that the press and the Palace were intent on discrediting Burrell and any secrets he might claim to have. But Burrell's woes didn't end there. 1 month after the trial, Burrell's flower shop mysteriously burnt down in an arson attack. He had enemies everywhere now, even on his own doorstep. I'd always thought that Paul Burrell was simply a butler who cashed in on Diana's memory. But now I realised that he had stepped into a murky and complicated world. There were dark forces at work, as Burrell had once said the Queen had warned him. He was now playing a dangerous game, but what card would Burrell play next?
I told the truth as far as I could. I believe I told the whole truth.
2007, the Diana inquest at the Royal Courts of Justice. Burrell was sent away by the judge to come back with evidence of his big secret. On his return, he said that Diana had been planning to move to America, something the judge said everyone already knew. But then Burrell said this.
Well, I didn't tell the whole truth. I told the truth as far as I could. I believe I told the whole truth.
Cornered, Burrell had found a way out, but at a cost. He had apparently perjured himself and would risk prosecution if he stayed in Britain. So he left for America, the land of second chances, where another royal outcast, Sarah Ferguson, had gone before him, and any royal connection is a business opportunity. Burrell lives in Florida, in the shadow of another princess's palace. I wondered what game of poker Burrell was playing now, and if he'd taken his cleverly concealed secret with him.
Paul Burrell undoubtedly has secrets. He undoubtedly has untold information. But there is a lot of that information which will never see the light of day and will stay with him until the day he dies.
What about Al Nevins, who manages Paul's business in the States? Did he think Paul would tell any more secrets?
It doesn't really serve his purposes any. You know, he'd like to get back to, I think, a fairly standard life. And I think he'd get criticized again. He's on TV, he's talking about the princess. It just allows more people to criticize him again.
Do you think he'll talk to us?
I think he's told as much as he feels he should tell, and the rest is not to be told. We've had some conversations. He's told me some things that I know he'll never share.
But you're not going to share them with me?
No, I'm not. I'm not going to share them with anyone either.
Even though they could make you a lot of money?
No, I wouldn't share them. He's only given me hints of them, but I just know he wouldn't do that.
People like Alan and Steve are part of the Paul Burrell industry in America. It is in their interest to say he has secrets. But I remembered what his former agent, Dave Warwick, had told me back in Warrington. It seems to me that he's a really fantastic poker player, that he has these cards, you know, that he says, I've got these cards and you don't know what these cards are.
Yeah, I think he's always got something up his sleeve. And if he was cornered, I think that he'd have a way of getting out of it. So now whether he has still got another secret, I honestly don't know. But as long as he tells the story that there's a secret, then he's got something to bargain with, which will keep Paul Burrell in the public domain. I mean, it's like me saying to you, gosh, I know something about so-and-so, and I'm going to tell you before the end of this interview, you're going to keep interviewing me till you get what little secret I know. I might not even know a secret.
So the important thing is to keep the game going?
Keep the game going, yeah.